stuffed lamb against her chest, the only thing she'd spoken to, once, in a whisper he wasn't even sure he heard. He opened her door gently. "Come on, darlin'," he said softly, the words useless in the space between them. She stepped out without looking at him. The auction yard buzzed with noise. Cattle mooing, men shouting bids, boots thudding against planks. The smell of hay and sweat and grilled meat drifted in the air. But Lily's face was blank, unreadable, like always. They found a quiet spot near the fence where she could sit. Clayton bought her a bottle of cold water and tried not to hover. He was staring at a blue roan gelding in the auction pen when he heard a soft voice behind him. "That little girl yours?" Turned. She wore a black scarf draped over her head and shoulders, dark clothes dusted with dirt, and eyes so steady they could have belonged to a hawk. A widow, anyone could tell. The kind who'd buried more than a husband. She didn't smile, but she didn't need to. Clayton nodded, a little too quick. "Yeah. That's Lily. She's quiet." He swallowed. "Ain't said a word since the fire." "Her mama," his voice broke before he could finish. The woman didn't push. She just nodded once, then stepped past him toward Lily. "Mind if I sit with her?" she asked. Clayton didn't know why, but he nodded. She knelt in the dirt beside Lily like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Lily didn't move. Just sat there, hands folded around her stuffed lamb, eyes fixed on nothing. "I had a little girl too," the widow said gently. She used to think horses could understand everything. Even pain. No reaction. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small, worn charm. A silver horseshoe on a thin leather string. "She gave me this before the storm took her. Said it was lucky." Clayton felt his heart clench. The woman didn't offer the charm. She just held it where Lily could see. And then she said something so soft Clayton almost missed it. "You know, sometimes the loudest pain lives in silence. But the moment you let go of what you're holding in your heart, the world starts to breathe again." Lily blinked. Her little fingers clenched tighter on the lamb. Then, slowly, the widow lifted one finger and pressed it gently to her own lips, then to Lily's. Lily's eyes shimmered, just slightly, like a window catching light. And then she whispered one word. "Sorry." Clayton staggered back like he'd been punched in the chest. His breath caught. The sounds of the auction, the auctioneer, the bidders, the crowd, all faded into nothing. He hadn't heard her voice in over 700 days. "Lily," he said, stepping forward. She didn't look at him. She looked at the widow. Her lips trembled, and her next words came in a soft, shaking breath. I didn't mean to. I left the door open." And just like that, Clayton's heart shattered all over again. It wasn't that she hadn't been able to speak. It was that she thought the fire was her fault. That she thought her mama died because she forgot to latch the barn door. The widow didn't flinch. She reached out and gently touched Lily's cheek. "You didn't make the storm, sweetheart," she whispered. "You just got caught in it." Clayton couldn't breathe. He dropped to his knees beside them, pulling Lily into his arms. She didn't resist. She melted into him like a child again, clutching his shirt, crying without a sound. He looked up at the widow. "I don't even know your name." She stood slowly, brushing dust from her knees. "Evelyn," she said. "I live out by the river bend. Folks don't come by much." Clayton swallowed the lump in his throat. "I don't know what you just did, but thank you." Evelyn gave him the smallest, saddest smile he'd ever seen. "I didn't do anything," she said. She just needed someone who wasn't afraid to listen. She turned to walk away, the crowd parting around her like she didn't belong to this world. But Clayton wasn't letting her disappear like some ghost. "Wait," he said, standing. "Please." She paused. "Would you come by the ranch sometime? Just to see her? Not as a favor. I'd pay you a—" Her head turned slightly. "You can't pay for healing, Mr. Mercer." "I know. I think she's been waiting for someone like you." Evelyn looked back at Lily, whose tear-streaked face now rested against her father's chest, her eyes no longer empty. After a long moment, Evelyn nodded once. Then she was gone. Clayton held his daughter tight as the sun dipped behind the auction sign, casting long shadows over everything he thought he understood. And in the warm dust, with the smell of hay and horses all around, a broken rancher and a hurting child both realized. Maybe silence wasn't the end of something. Maybe it was the beginning. 2 days later, the ranch was quieter than usual. Not in the way it had been before, the kind of dead silence that wrapped around the house like grief, but a softer kind. Peaceful. Like something sacred had cracked open and let in a little light. Clayton stood by the window, coffee cooling in his hand, watching Lily from the kitchen. She was sitting on the porch swing, barefoot, tracing circles on the wood with her heel. Her stuffed lamb sat beside her, but she wasn't clinging to it the way she used to. She was humming. Barely, but it was there. A broken melody that still managed to sound like music. It had only been one word. Sorry. But that single word had changed everything. And all he could think about was the woman who unlocked it. Evelyn. That name had stuck in his mind like a whisper he couldn't forget. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way she spoke. Not like someone trying to fix Lily, but like someone who understood silence. Not feared it. Not filled it. Just lived inside it. He hadn't expected her to show up again. So when he saw her truck, old, rust-colored, rattling its way up his long dirt drive, his chest tightened. Lily didn't run. She didn't hide. She simply stood up from the swing and waited. Evelyn stepped out of the truck, wearing the same black scarf, same worn boots, like she hadn't changed a thing since the auction. She held a small wooden box under one arm and walked with a slight limp Clayton hadn't noticed before. He met her halfway across the yard, wiping his hands on his jeans. Didn't think you'd actually come. She shrugged. Didn't think you'd actually ask. They shared a faint smile, the kind that felt more like a truce than a greeting. Lily approached slowly, her eyes wide but not scared. She looked at Evelyn like someone approaching a wild horse, cautious but curious. I brought something, Evelyn said, kneeling down and opening the box. Inside were smooth, polished stones painted with animals. A horse. A dove. The fox. The turtle. My daughter used to talk through these when she couldn't find words. She laid them out on the porch step like they were something sacred. Lily knelt beside her. She didn't touch them. Just stared. Then, with trembling fingers, she reached for the fox. Evelyn smiled. Smart. Foxes are survivors. Lily turned to her dad. Can we keep it? Clayton nearly dropped his coffee. Her voice. Thin. Soft like smoke, but they're. Yeah, baby. Of course we can. That evening, Evelyn stayed for dinner. It was simple, stew, cornbread, and fresh sweet tea, but it was the first time in years Clayton had set 3 plates at the table. Lily talked more. Not a lot. Not loud. But enough to make his eyes sting every time she opened her mouth. Evelyn mostly listened. She asked gentle questions. About Lily's dreams. Her favorite color. Whether she liked horses. Whether she remembered the sound of her mama's laugh. At one point, Lily whispered, I hear it sometimes when I close my eyes. And for the first time, Clayton didn't try to hold back the tears. He let them fall, quietly, like rain against the barn roof. After dinner, Evelyn helped Lily feed the horses. Clayton watched from a distance. Something about the way she moved, how the horses calmed around her, how Lily reached for her hand, made his chest ache. Not just with gratitude, but something deeper. Something he didn't dare name yet. He joined them as the sun dipped behind the pasture. You work with kids often? He asked. Used to, Evelyn said. At a camp for grieving families. Before I moved out here. Why'd you stop? She didn't answer right away. Her fingers grazed the horse's mane like she was trying to remember a time that didn't hurt. Because my daughter was supposed to be there with me, she said softly. The day the river took her, I was at the store buying marshmallows. Clayton's throat tightened. She wanted a s'mores. Lily leaned her head against Evelyn's side without a word. And that's when Clayton realized Evelyn wasn't here to save anyone. She was just trying to survive, same as them. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed with her fox stone beside her pillow, Clayton walked Evelyn out to her truck. The stars were bright above the pasture. The kind of quiet night that made even big things feel small. I don't know how to thank you, he said. You don't have to. Still, if there's anything you need. Evelyn gave him a look that silenced him. I didn't come for payment, Clayton. I came because I know what it feels like to live inside a memory that won't let you breathe. She opened the truck door but paused before climbing in. She's going to be okay, she added. But she'll need truth, not just comfort. Clayton nodded slowly. I've tried to protect her. Evelyn's eyes softened. Then stop hiding the truth. Let her know it wasn't her fault. Say it out loud. Every day if you have to. Until her heart believes it. The truck rumbled to life and rolled down the driveway, taillights fading into the dark. Clayton stood there long after she was gone, hands on his hips, watching the stars. He didn't know what this was between them. Didn't know where it was going. But for the first time in a long time, he wanted to find out. The morning started with birdsong. Not the distant kind that slips through the trees, but the kind that perches right outside your window and makes you believe the world is trying to tell you something. Clayton sat at the edge of his bed, lacing his boots slower than usual, listening to the soft hum of Lily's voice coming from the kitchen. She was talking to her stuffed lamb, brushing its ears with a toothbrush. The sound filled the house in a way that made every wall seem warmer. 2 weeks had passed since the auction. 2 weeks since Evelyn knelt beside Lily and gave her back her voice. She'd come by most days since then. Sometimes in the mornings, sometimes at dusk. She never stayed long. Never made promises. Just showed up with quiet strength and left behind a little more peace than she'd found. Clayton didn't ask for more. But he thought about it constantly. He stepped outside to find her already in the pasture, checking the hooves of a skittish colt. She always moved like the land belonged to her, not in ownership, but in understanding. Coffee? He asked, holding out a mug. She accepted it with a tired smile. You don't sleep much, do you? Used to, he said. Then life happened. Evelyn chuckled softly. Ain't that the truth? They leaned on the fence, watching the horses graze. The wind smelled like dust and mesquite, and for a while, neither said anything. Then Clayton cleared his throat. I told Lily. Evelyn turned her head slightly. Told her she didn't cause the fire. Told her I should have never let her carry that weight. Evelyn said nothing, but her eyes shimmered. She cried, he continued. Then she slept through the night. First time in 2 years. Evelyn looked down into her coffee. You're doing good, Clayton. He shook his head. I don't know what I'm doing. I just don't want to lose her. You're not, she said gently. You're finding her. He looked at her then really looked. The way the morning sun caught the silver strands in her dark hair. The way her hands, rough and scarred, held her coffee like something sacred. And he realized he wasn't just grateful to her. He needed her. Not as a crutch. Not as a savior. But as someone who understood what it felt like to lose the world and still keep walking. Evelyn, he began, but before he could finish, the sound of tires crunching gravel cut through the air. A black SUV rolled up the drive. Not local. Too clean. Too polished. Clayton's gut tensed as a man in a suit stepped out. Mr. Mercer? He called. Clayton stepped forward cautiously. Yeah. The man glanced at Evelyn, then back to Clayton. I'm looking for Evelyn Rose. Evelyn stiffened beside him. Depends who's asking, she said calmly. The man pulled out a small folder. My name's Garrett Linley. I'm with Child Trauma Services. We've been trying to locate you for some time. Clayton's stomach dropped. What's this about? Garrett glanced between them. Mrs. Rose left a grief therapy facility last year after a patient relapse. She was under observation for depression, PTSD, and complicated bereavement following her daughter's death. Clayton's hands curled into fists. She's not a danger to anyone. I didn't say she was, Garrett said carefully. But she walked away from treatment before it was complete. We just want to ensure she's stable. That she's safe. I am safe, Evelyn said, her voice sharp but steady. Garrett sighed. Then please, let us help you stay that way. The silence that followed was unbearable. Clayton looked at Evelyn, eyes searching hers. She didn't flinch. Didn't run. I left because no one in that place listened, she said. They called it grief like it was a disease. But I wasn't broken. I was mourning. Clayton turned to Garrett. She helped my daughter speak. She's the reason I have a family again. Garrett gave a slow nod. Then I'm glad. But she still needs to come in, just to verify her state of mind. It's standard. Evelyn looked at Lily, who now stood barefoot at the porch steps, watching quietly, clutching her fox stone. I'll go, Evelyn said, voice cracking. Just not today. Garrett hesitated, then nodded once and handed her his card. Soon. Please. When the SUV left, Clayton turned to her. You don't have to go back there. Yes, I do, she said. Because if I don't face what I left behind, I'll never be free. Not for myself. Not for Lily. Clayton felt his chest tighten. Will you come back? She stepped closer. Her hand grazed his, fingers brushing like a question. If you ask me to, she whispered. I'm asking. Her eyes welled up, but her smile was the strongest thing he'd ever seen. The next morning, Evelyn was gone. No note. No goodbye. Just silence again. Days passed. Then a week. Lily spoke more now. Full sentences, shy laughter, questions about the stars. But every night she asked the same thing. Is Evelyn coming back? Clayton always answered the same way. I hope so, baby. Then one afternoon, a truck rolled into the drive. Rust-colored. Familiar. Evelyn stepped out, scarf gone, hair tied back, face lighter than he'd ever seen it. She walked straight up to Lily, knelt down, and pulled something from her pocket. A new painted stone. The phoenix. Thought you might want to trade, she said. Lily took it with both hands. What's it mean? Evelyn smiled. It means even fire can't destroy everything. Clayton didn't speak. Just stepped forward and wrapped his arms around them both. He didn't need to ask anymore. She was home. And for the first time in years, silence wasn't a prison. It was a choice. Because now, they had voices worth listening to. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of kindness, of healing, of second chances, then do one thing for us. Tap the like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story that just might change someone's life. Your support keeps these stories alive and helps them reach the people who need them most. We'll see you in the next one.